I'm super excited to be with you all tonight, and I have a pop-up. Okay, the meeting's being recorded. I'm super excited to share some tips and tricks that I've learned as a student, and then transferring from student internship to professional work and everything. So I'm actually going to share my screen if that's okay, because I do have a PowerPoint. But I first want to say congratulations to everyone who just completed their internship. You guys are awesome, and I'm super excited for you all. And I hope that that experience was amazing. And then for those who are in the process of starting your internship, hopefully you'll find some of this information helpful. So let me go ahead and get my screen up really quick. Okay, let's see. Okay. Hopefully you all can see my screen. I can't see you all, so I'm assuming so. So this is what I'm just going to call it tonight, Professional Development 101. I am a project manager for Adventist Health Central Valley Network, and my location is actually Adventist Health Tulare, and I work in the Community Wellbeing Department. So tonight, I'm just going to give a brief overview about my academic journey, a quick overview of my current position and some of the things that I get to work on, and then we'll really dig deep and discuss a little bit of workforce development, what to do before you reach out to a preceptor, a couple of the communication do's and don'ts, how to make a good first impression, understanding the variety of job opportunities, as well as understanding office environments. And then my favorite part, keys for success, finding a mentor and working on your personal development, because that is something that you can all do today. So after high school, I attended West Hills Community College in Lemoore. I then transferred to Fresno State in the fall of 2014. And like Dr. Perez mentioned, I finished my master's in the middle of a global pandemic, which was definitely an experience of itself. I had the opportunity to defend my thesis over Zoom, which was very weird, but definitely reduced a lot of the stress because I was able to see my PowerPoint slides right in front of me. And then I also became CHESS certified in spring 2020, and I highly recommend taking that exam. I had the opportunity to take that exam in the comfort of my own home, which definitely I think helped me pass it on the first try. Okay, so just a brief overview of the work that I do. So I work in our Community Wellbeing Department, and we have a community wellbeing impact model, and there's 6 different buckets of work. So for leadership and governance, some of that will be, to convene local work groups that align with our overall mission, provide leadership to coalitions that I attend, being able to be a resource. Under regulatory compliance, a lot of that has to deal with my community benefit work, being able to tell the story of how our dollars are being spent, and working on CHNAs, working on community health implementation strategies, and then working on annual reports that are due to our corporate office every year. So a lot of things go into that bucket to where we are basically just trying to keep our nonprofit status and doing what we can to tell our story. Under finance, some of the work that can include will be working on budget management and being able to figure out how much funds are going to be spent towards X, Y, and Z. Being able to tell a story with the data that we get, but also being able to explain why we spend the money and how we spend it. So for example, one of our priority areas is access to care. And within all of the budgeting, I can tell you how many round trips we can provide to our patients and then how much that costs. So a lot of little fun stuff goes into that bucket. The next one is communication. And if you see me glancing down, I'm just looking at my notes. But communication, we work to address internal and external communication strategies, how you communicate within your organization, but then also outside of your organization. And then one of the other things that I like to do under the communication bucket is being able to work on article and story development. You probably have heard that data equals stories and stories equals funding. So being able to tell us, and tell the community where your funds are going and how they're supporting community members. Under strategy and evaluation, working on the well-being of people, places, and equity. And then signature projects, basically an overview of that can include just promising practices that are happening across our network. And maybe what's working best at maybe our Sonora hospital could be something that we can adjust here down in the Central Valley. So all kinds of things go into that. That's definitely a conversation of its own. That is just a brief overview of some of the things that I get to work on. And then like right now, I'm looking to develop our Diabetes Among Friends curriculum that we use from Scripps. Before the pandemic, those were in person. Due to the pandemic, a lot of that was shut down. And now we're looking to hopefully bring that online. So I get to work on that development. So all kinds of exciting things. And then at any point, if you have any questions, be sure to interrupt me and ask away. But before I started doing all of this fun work, I was a student just like you. And I'm just going to share a couple of the quotes that I really like. And so the first one here says, "Don't let what you cannot do interfere with what you can do." So as you're entering the workforce, you might notice that you are the youngest person sitting around the table, and you're in a room filled with folks that have been in the workforce for years. And you're just wondering, how are they going to take you seriously? But just really own your education and own what you know, and you'll be unstoppable. And then the next one is that it's the little details that are vital. Little things make big things happen. That's one of my favorites by John Wooded. Okay, so before you start looking for a potential preceptor, and even before you start looking for actual work, you want to make sure that you have an updated resume or CV. Update your LinkedIn, and also be mindful of updating your social media outlets. So Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, Snapchat. Be mindful that what you post today will be available for others to find 5, 10, 20 years from now. It's permanent. So you want to make sure that you are building the persona that you want the world to see. Any questions on social media?
Yes, I have a question.
Go for it.
Hi, Samantha. My name is Kendallyn. Thank you so much for joining us today. So I often hear people share to be careful on social media because things can pop up, later on down the line. But I hardly ever hear people mention what to do if you do have something on social media that you don't want people to see. Do you have any advice on that?
Well, for me, one of the first things that I did is to make sure that all of my accounts were private. Facebook, you have to accept who is a friend or who's a friend. But then making sure that you view your screen in the eyes of another. So setting all of your settings to private and making sure that they only see what you want them to see. Instagram, you can set your account to private or public. I don't use Snapchat, and I'm hardly ever on Twitter, so I'm not truly familiar with those. But just making sure that all of your settings are set to what you want. I've never encountered something popping up that I didn't want. Maybe before you start your job or at your place of employment, maybe go through and delete things that maybe you wouldn't want your grandma to see. So just making sure that your social media is you taking your best foot forward. I said that wrong, sorry. But you understand what I'm talking about.
Yeah, I do.
Did that help answer your question?
Yeah, it did. I mean, I think a lot of times we start accounts and then we don't really go into the settings and customize them to the way that we want them to. So I thought that was really good advice. So thank you.
Yeah, and another thing is that on your Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, You're going to want to make sure that your location is disabled unless you want people to know where you're at. Because if you post something, it usually tells you your exact location, and you just have to be mindful of that as well. Especially if for some reason down the road you are in not necessarily in trouble with your organization, but if there's like a high profile case that's happening, and people can be stalkish and want to know every move and every location that you're at. So just be mindful of those things. All right, moving forward. So before you think of potential preceptor locations or places of employment, you're going to want to do your research. And this kind of ties into what Dr. Perez was saying, that some of you are having a hard time engaging with your organization. Try to make sure you learn as much as you can about your organization. So you're going to want to make sure that you understand your mission, if they have one, and then understand the different values. For example, Adventist Health has our B statements. Be love, be a force for good, be a mission owner, be welcoming, be curious, be brilliant. Own those B values if you have something similar. And when you go in for your interview, you might be asked, which B statement do you feel like you own? So being able to explain why. So definitely look into the vision, and then understand the network, where your organization is located. If they have rural health clinics, you probably don't need to know how many exact that they have, but just know the different locations. So for example, Adventist Health in the Central Valley, we have 3 main hospitals and rural health clinic hospitals. So Hanford, Selma, Reedley, and Tulare, but then there's all kinds of clinics that surround our location, and just being able to know what you're talking about and own it. All right, a couple of communication do's and don'ts. And I find that this goes for people that are just starting their careers, but even now in your position, if you are in a part-time or full-time. I definitely have to double check emails before they get sent, just to make sure that everything is clear and precise. So some of the do's, you want to make sure that your spelling and grammatical mistakes are minimal. Stay positive, even when you are given answers you don't like. You always have to put your best foot forward, and try not to be too hard on yourself, because you're just trying to do what you can, and you can't change the world. And then some of the don'ts: don't come off rude or entitled. Straight up ask for help getting a job, and submitting incomplete thoughts. And we'll kind of go into a couple examples in a second. So example A. Hi Jane, my name is blank, and I'm a public health administration major at Fresno State University. And I wanted to know if you could bring me on board next semester so I can complete my internship hours. Thank you. So this email pretty much gets the message across of what they are seeking. I understand that they're a public health major and that they're going to Fresno State. There's a couple grammatical errors on this, but I really don't know much. And so the response to this email could have been something like, hey, my name is blank. I work in our community wellbeing department. Tell me more information about what you're hoping to get out of your internship. Tell me a little bit more about you. And this was an honest email that was sent to a coworker, and they received no follow-up once they reached out. So if you're reaching out to a preceptor or a future employer, you want to make sure that you are just clear in your communication. And then if they reach back out to you, just acknowledge that they did that. Even if you already have something else lined up, you never want to leave a person hanging. So we'll kind of go into example B. And this one actually happened to me. And there's been a couple folks that have reached out over the Fresno State Book and Trade Advice page. And some of them have been really positive and been able to have that conversation back and forth of what to expect within the MPH program, and if I had any advice to give them. But for this person, they say, hey, I saw that you graduated with an MPH. I'm aiming to apply to the program. Any advice? I then reached back out and asked if they had certain areas that they were looking for advice in, and that person never followed up. So once again, not following up on an email or just simply a Facebook message. Here we have another one. It says, "Hi, my name is Jane and I'm looking to do my internship at your work. Please let me know a time and date that works best to discuss how you would like to move forward." So this one, they're just being straightforward. They are assuming that that preceptor is going to say yes, and they're going to move forward with the process of aligning with the goals that they have as a Fresno State student and the goals of the organization. Basically, Jane is probably thinking that she's going to get a response saying, "Hey, yes, this sounds great. Let's move forward." But she could have worded it a little bit differently. So the response was, "Good morning, Jane. My name is blank, and I currently work within our community wellbeing department here at Adventist Health. By chance, would you be willing to give me more information on what your internship requires of me as a potential preceptor? How many hours are you looking for? Are there any curriculum requirements that need to be met? And what are you hoping to gain from this experience? Looking forward to hearing back. Best." So very friendly email response back to Jane. And there was no follow-up. So just be mindful of that and always try to just acknowledge it, even if you already have something lined up. Any questions on sending emails out? Alrighty, so here's an example of what I actually did when I reached out to my preceptor. This is a lot of information, but I basically started off as, "Good morning, my name is Samantha and I've lived in Hanford my entire life." I gave a little brief info of why I was interested. So, interested in the community wellness and diabetes programs. I am wondering if you're looking for a student intern for the 2018-2019 academic year. I probably shouldn't have put 2 question marks. And then I state, "I would love to participate in an internship that is local, as I can help give back to my local community." I tied it back to why I wanted the internship at that specific location. I also, assuming that, my preceptor was going to be doing a lot of diabetes programs, I gave a brief little background of my experience within diabetes. So stating that I was a type 1 diabetic for 13 years, telling this person the current medication regimen that I was on. So I was using an insulin pump, experience working with campers ages 1 through 17 up at a summer camp as a camp counselor, and then also my volunteer experience with DYF and then Dogs for Diabetics. And you might hear my dog scratching right now. Dogs for Diabetics helps provide diabetes alert dogs to type 1 diabetics. They're trained to help detect the low blood sugar. So I just gave an overall brief statement of who I was, my background. And then I also stated that as a Hispanic, I'm interested in the health issues associated with this target population. I then stated that I originally got your information from blank. I'm a special services cashier at Home Depot. And I was talking to him about my education and what my plans are for my future. When I mentioned diabetes education, he could not pull out his business card fast enough and wrote down your information. And then I mentioned, in class, we're looking to see, potential internship locations and starting that process. And then letting her know that, my instructor most likely emailed you already, but I just thought that it would give a little bit of background and information about myself. So this is the email that I originally sent out to my preceptor. It was probably too long. I know that there's definitely a few grammar mistakes in there. I was just really nervous. I didn't know if this person had other student interns lined up. I was just trying to get my information out there. And it all started a conversation. It sparked a conversation. I was able to, get in and do my internship with Adventist Health. And then like Dr. Perez said, I was able to continue my work there and I got hired full-time right after my internship. So I was full-time and then I started my final year in the MPH program writing my thesis. So all you have to do is just be yourself, give a little bit of background of why you want to work at that location if you're reaching out to a person like this. And then hopefully that just starts the spark of conversation. Any questions there? I don't see your faces, so if you are on mute, make sure to unmute. Alrighty, I don't see anybody. So how to make a good first impression? You're going to want to make sure that, whether it's a preceptor interview or, your place of employment, you got that interview, that first day can be a little nerve-wracking. So you're going to want to make sure that you arrive on time. And I think, 15 to 30 minutes before a scheduled interview, sounds about right. You want to make sure that you're at the right location. So for example, if it's an organization like Adventist Health, we have so many different offices and people work in many different places. And you don't want to get there 5 minutes beforehand and be in the wrong building. And, the correct building is maybe 2 or 3 miles away, meaning now you probably have to drive a little bit faster than you should to get to your location. So definitely be prepared. Definitely look at your road conditions, the weather if you need to, making sure that you're dressed appropriately, and just making sure that you arrive on time. Have copies of your current resume or CV. When I went to go talk to my preceptor, I also had copies of the competencies of the MPH program and the top 10 public health competencies, all in hand, ready to go. Have a few goals and expectations of what you hope to get out of the internship, and being able to state why and have that open conversation of why they should help you, and then why, and your purpose to why you want to complete your internship there. So those are a couple of the main 3 things that I had going into my preceptor interview. And you're definitely going to want to make sure that you show enthusiasm, even when you're weary and scared and not sure the direction of the conversation. Being able to connect to your education. Like I said earlier, you might start, going to meetings where you're the youngest person there, and you have to try to make the case and, let the not older folks, but the experienced folks, know that you are worthy and you know what you're talking about. So connect your education, mention all of your past experiences, especially, maybe you were a peer mentor for a summer in a program, connect to that. And then like I said, don't allow your youth or inexperience to affect your perception of yourself. Know that you are worthy and that you can do it. Any questions there?
Yes. How would you move forward if, this is Kendallin again, how would you advise a student to move forward if they didn't have any experience?
So for me, I didn't have actual experience in public health when I went into my preceptor interview. I had never worked or volunteered at, a public health department. The only background that I had was my connection to diabetes and my connection to working with youth who have type 1. So I consider myself, to be very inexperienced of how hospital systems work. But if you find the right preceptor and you find the right employer that are willing to help you grow, learn, be a sponge, soak all of that knowledge in. And then, I really didn't know a lot about the theories and whatnot and how it connected to real life applications. So basically just put your best foot forward. You live and learn, what works today might not work tomorrow. But just try to do your best and stay positive. Did that help answer your question?
Yes, it did. Thank you. I know we have like some folks in our cohort who kind of like change their direction as far as like their master's degree. And that can sometimes be intimidating, like if they don't have experience in public health and they're kind of like, well, what do I say and how do I get their buy-in? So it really comes down to confidence, it sounds like, and being able to be creative to match experience with something that they can resonate with.
Definitely. And then also I think what helped me is that when it came time to transition from student intern to actual employee of the organization, I already had a year of practice. And even though that practice year might not have went out or gone the way I wanted it to, or maybe things didn't play out or I didn't get to work on a certain project, you already had that connection with that person, And, in my case, my preceptor became my boss. And then, I've changed bosses a few times here and there. But she's always that mentor that I go to that helps explain things. So, off the start, make that connection, make a working relationship with your preceptor, because they can open the doors to other avenues. So, alrighty. So understanding office environments, things as a student might look a lot differently. As you are working with your preceptor, you are probably only being told certain information. And now comes the time where you are hired and, oh my gosh, you know everything, maybe too much. So a couple of the things that you want to be mindful of is that there's going to be folks who are there, just to clock in and clock out. They're there for the paycheck. Not everyone plays nice, and just understanding that different departments have different ways that they go about doing things. Understanding the chain of command, knowing who are you going to go to if you have a problem. If you are having difficulties with your supervisor, who's the next person going to be? And then, you have to learn how to work with people. I'm just going to share a couple of the books that I have read over the past year, and you don't have to go out and get these. There's a ton of other books that, say similar things. But the first one is The 9 Working Ways. And this basically tells you that there's 9 different people in the workplace. You have the perfectionist. They get things done right, regardless of the consequences. You have the helper, the one that nurtures others' careers and demands to be appreciated about it. You have the producer, works hard to succeed, but can burn out and overwork. And I'm going to butcher this word, not concierge. I can't say it. But the fourth one explores his or her creativity and deep feelings, but may get lost in them. The sage craves data, theories, and insights, but may forget the human element. The troubleshooter knows the secrets of who can be trusted, but can get mighty paranoid. The visionary inspires with brilliant, fun, imaginative ideas, but leaves closure to others. The top dog, they exercise leadership, but may end up as a vengeful bully. The mediator, wants everybody working as a conflict-free team, but they may forget his or her own goals. So it just basically gives you a brief overview of the different types of people that you can come in contact with in the workplace. And it's based off of the Enneagram, which is a personality test. I don't remember my results, but I think I was in the middle of, being a troubleshooter, trying to be, keeping everyone calm and conflict-free. So that was just a really good book to read and get helpful insight with. And I'll put all this information in the chat before we log off. The other book is the Great Employee Handbook, Making Work and Life Better. And I'll kind of go into detail of this in a little bit, but it just gives tips and tricks on how to put your best foot forward, especially in the 90 days. It gives you tips on a couple things to be cautious of, and then just making sure that you are putting your best foot forward. And learning how to work with people, that's a tough one. Some will be super easy and some will be, really hard. For example, my preceptor, she was my boss. I got along really well with her. And then maybe down the road, another colleague or another boss, the communication strategy is different. So I have to adjust, learn the way that they work and get things done, and learn how to work together to achieve your overall goal. Any questions there? Alrighty. So one of the things that you can do, as a student, as you are getting, finding your path into your workplace, find a group of coworkers that will support you and support your vision and what you want to accomplish in your role and your job. Find a best friend at work. So we call it here a BFAW. Someone you can ask questions to, ask for advice, support one another when things don't go as planned, and especially being able to, develop your thinking cap. thinking cap. What works and what doesn't? How can you change something that you're doing to make it better? And then someone who you can take a 15-minute walk with during a break or a lunch, just somebody that you can connect with that's outside of your typical role, and just to be able to be that person that, is your best friend at work. Alrighty, understanding the job market. So now I have a couple questions for you. So when you think of public health and everything that, our field goes into, what jobs do you think that are out there? Can anybody list a couple traditional versus non-traditional? Anybody have any ideas of what some of the traditional jobs are?
Is it traditional? Could one of them be like a health educator?
Mm-hmm. Okay. Do you have a non-traditional?
Maybe an epidemiologist?
Okay, I'm not sure what that is, but that sounds really awesome. Anybody else have any examples of, traditional versus non-traditional? So some of the traditional, like one of the students said, health educator, community health worker, adjusting to community needs, being able to specialize in drug addiction or alcoholism, somebody who helps with poor diet concerns, tobacco and vaping issues, clinical researcher, healthcare consultant, and then some of the non-traditional, medical translation. Maybe all you do every day is proofread reports and research and making sure that everything just makes sense and it flows correctly. Healthcare communicator, a field consultant, examine how organizations do things and how they can improve workplace wellness. Working for, a corporate agency that has, maybe nothing to do with the healthcare system. So for example, Home Depot, but they up at their corporate office have a wellness program in place for their employees. So maybe you tap into that and you go work up at the corporate office and being able to, figure out how you can improve worksite wellness, especially, with Home Depot, you have employees that are lifting things that are maybe not squatting properly. So maybe you're helping develop protocols for them. So just things like that. And then always making sure that you use your handy dandy job search engine. So like LinkedIn, I'm so sorry, I cannot talk. Indeed. And then making sure that you are, proactive about the different terminology that you're putting in. So for example, just this afternoon, I was on LinkedIn and I put in public health, United States. And the first 20 jobs that filtered were pharmacy technician positions for Walmart. So maybe that's something that you don't want to go into. So just being mindful of that the different words can populate different job descriptions. Maybe instead of public health, you put community health worker or healthcare management. So just being mindful of the different words that you're using when you're searching on Indeed or LinkedIn. So these are just some of the, jobs that you can look into, with your MPH. And I took this from, it was literally www.100jobsinpublichealth.com. Maybe you want to go into data and be a data analyst, working in chronic health disease management. And I'm sorry, but I have a typo there. Maybe a population health manager, a vaccination coordinator. That is very popular now with this whole COVID and being able to get vaccines out to people. Maybe you're that person that is putting everything together and making sure that when it's time to hit the ground running, your vaccine is, 10 out of 10 for customer satisfaction. And like I said, maybe you're working in worksite wellness, disaster preparedness. How many people knew family that were affected by the fires this last summer? So just being curious and know that there's all kinds of different avenues out there that you can do or, get out there and do with your MPH. And so now we're going to go ahead and talk a little bit about some of the personal development that you can do, starting today. And, you heard me talk about the Great Employee Handbook. But another book that I recommend reading is The Generosity Factor. Discover the joy of giving your time, talent, and treasure. And it was written by Ken Blanchard and S. Truett Cathy. And Cathy was actually the founder of Chick-fil-A. So, you find that out at the end of the book, spoiler alert, but it's really interesting to hear his story and how he helped develop, helping others figure out their success versus their significance. So what are some things that define success in your eyes? In your world, how are you successful?
Being happy with your work.
Okay. Maybe it's the wealth and how much money you have. Was somebody else trying to talk? Go for it. If you're trying to talk, I apologize for interrupting. So success, maybe that looks like your wealth, your achievements, your education, your status, and then, your significance, your generosity, your service to help others, your relationships that you form with not only your family members, but your work and coworkers. So being able to, work on both as you go through your career. So that is a book that I really liked. Another book that's not on here is How Full Is Your Bucket? And it talks about the importance of bucket filling. Are you a person that is always, staying positive, staying upbeat, or do you find that your bucket at the end of the day is empty? And that's a whole conversation of its own. But The Generosity Factor, The Great Employee Handbook, and How Full Is Your Bucket? Those are my favorite top 3 books right now that I've read over the last year. All right, so I know that Dr. Perez talked about, maybe a few of you have to work on your time management. So it's perfect that, I included this in my PowerPoint presentation for y'all today. Staying organized. It is so hard to stay organized, especially when you're a student. Maybe you have a part-time job, full-time job, writing your thesis. Things get crazy. So and I can't see everybody because I have my PowerPoint up, but does anybody have any major struggles that they're facing right now with time management? What's going on?
I do.
Okay, what are your struggles?
I work a lot plus overtime and then trying to finish my project and keep up with schoolwork. Mm-hmm. And my dog, you can hear that. But yeah.
You're doing great. You're doing great. What else?
We'll see.
Are there others that are having struggles with time management? So Kayla, so you mentioned a couple of the struggles. How would you take the first step to be more organized?
For me, I've seen everything visually, so I rely on my Google Calendar a lot. I write everything from tasks to appointments on there, and I just open it each day and then cross off each task as I'm going. So that's really helpful lately.
Yeah, that sounds like a very good way to make sure that you're staying on task with everything. Maybe it's also taking a sticky notepad and just making sure that, your top 3 are on your mirror every morning before you start your day. Or maybe you place it right by the door and know that, by 9 o'clock, you have to reply to, 10 emails. By noon, you have to have worked on, a project for, an hour and a half or 2 hours. And so looking for different ways to help you stay organized. So some of the things that I've done and that I would recommend to help you stay on track of everything. Maybe you're purchasing a planner or desk calendar. I currently use the Day Designer, the strategic planner and daily agenda for living a well-designed life. And it looks like this. It's about 1 inch thick. But what I like about this planner is that I'll show you. This planner, and I'm sorry if you can't see this clearly, I should have took a screenshot and posted it on here. But the basics of this planner, it's super simple. On the left-hand side, you have your schedule from 6 a.m. to 8 p.m., where you can write all of your meetings, all of your appointments, but then you have your today's top 3, your to-do list and your notes. And then maybe tonight you are cooking dinner and you want to make sure that you go to the grocery store. So you put get milk before going home, and then you have your daily gratitude. it's a way to stay organized. And for me, it works. It might not work for all of you, but this was the first planner that really helped me stay on top of my projects. And there's all kinds of different planners out there. You know, color code projects, you know, have your different color folders. And I'm looking towards my desk right now. I have blue, I have green, I have red, and they all mean a different thing. You know, write project notes of who, what, when, why, and how. So a year from now, you know, if you are starting to transition to a full-time position, you know, maybe you are working on some reports that are only done annually. And so come 2022, when you have to work on it again, and you open your document and you're like, oh my gosh, what do I do? You know, you have your notes to go back, and you know who to contact to get data. You know who to contact to maybe get a template. So who, what, when, why, and how you do things is something that I kind of put on a sticky note and stick on an important document. So, you know, 6 months from now, when I have to go back, I know exactly what I need to do. And then if you're like me who likes to read, color code your book notes. In my Great Employee Handbook, I have a little index card, and I also have little stickers. But each little sticker means something. You know, for this book, blue means tips for success. Green is things that I can do now. And pink are things that maybe I shouldn't do. So for example, in my book, a pink one that just happened to pop up today, don't let perfection be the enemy of your execution. So I thought that was really cool as I was learning on how to execute my work better. So whatever book you're reading, you know, have a little sticky note, have your different colors, and flag different things that you want to look back towards later. Color code your Excel sheets. That will really help you stay on top of things. And when you are trying to tackle email for the very first time, you know, you have your student email, but work email is a whole nother thing on its own. You know, maybe you're using a 1, 2, 3 rule. Ones would be things that need to be done before 9 a.m. Twos would need to be done before noon. Then 3, you know, maybe at the end of the day, maybe tomorrow. So practicing your 1, 2, 3. And then in your calendar, you know, whether it's Google or Outlook, you know, you can set little folders on the side that say action, or you can label them 1, 2, 3, and maybe your action folder are the things that you need to do now. Maybe you have a read folder. I do, and it's stuff that maybe I can't read right now, that maybe that's not, you know, related to my work entirely. But if I have some free time and want to work on a little of my own professional development, I'll stick a good article in my read section, and then everything else can go into other. I highly recommend color coding your calendar. So my Outlook calendar, I think I have anywhere between 15 and 17 different colors that I use. I know that all of my meetings are in green. All of my chess webinars and extra credit stuff that I have to do is in purple. All of my time off is in pink. And then every time I have to start my day late, I put in a time slot and I highlight it yellow. So just be curious and be, you know, try different things that work for you. But those are just a couple that work for me. And then as much as you can, try to stay on top of your workload. Make sure that you're being mindful of starting your projects, you know, a month, 2 months in advance. Right now, like I mentioned in the beginning, I'm working to get our Diabetes Among Friends program up and running via Zoom. And so I have a launch date that I'm hopeful of, which is June 1st, you know, the first of the month. We're kicking off summer, the month of, you know, that we're transitioning from spring to summer. And that's when I want to start my project. You know, but now in April and in May, I have so much stuff that I need to do for that to make that day work and make it be successful. So starting things in advance. Any questions there on organization or some of the things that were mentioned?
I just want to say, sorry, I'm driving, that I definitely agree with starting it early, like whatever project you have, because I'm working full-time 9 to 5. I have this project that me and my boss didn't start early, and then my coworker quit. So now they didn't start early now, so everything's on top of each other, and it sort of sucks. So definitely start as early as you can, because life sucks at the moment.
You're doing great, and I hope you're driving safely. But yeah, like she said, you know, making sure that you're starting things in advance, because if you have situations that come up like that, you know, you don't want to be scrambling last minute to complete a 34-page document, because your work isn't going to be authentic. It's going to be rushed, and that can, be seen by a reviewer. So just try to do your best. I know you all are doing it, but do what works best for you. And then in doing so, you're going to want to make sure that you are working on your work-life balance. How many of you maybe answer emails too late, or answer emails too much, or answer emails before it's 6 o'clock in the morning? Is anybody brave enough to admit that they check email way too much?
Yes.
All right.
I do.
And how many times a day do you think you check your email?
Over 10.
Over 10? Okay.
The email tab is always open.
Yeah,
It's
and
just
then
closed.
you'll find that, if your email tab is constantly open, you'll be working on a project, and pretty soon the phone rings, and then somebody walks through your door, and then pretty soon it's an hour and a half later, and you still haven't got to work on your one project that you needed to get done. So remember that you cannot do it all. You are not expected to change the world. But we can do things every day, in small increments that can help, make change happen within the communities that you're serving. So take breaks, clean to think. I don't know how many of you are, maybe working from home or still, doing school from home. I can't tell you how many times I have stopped what I'm doing, and went to go clean the dishes, or went to go vacuum, or went to go take a walk around the pool, just to clear my mind and see things from a different perspective. Play with your dogs, take a quick 2-breather cat nap, scream for 2 minutes if you have to, if you're having a really frustrating day, but take your breaks. And maybe sometimes you have to get on your exercise equipment when you're on a webinar. You're killing 2 birds with 1 stone. You're getting your credit for your webinar, and you're exercising. So being mindful of taking time for yourself. Set boundaries, setting, when you're on the clock and off the clock. Very rarely do I answer an email before 8 o'clock. If it's an emergency, then obviously I will try to stay on top of things. But my day starts at 8 o'clock. I take a 1-hour lunch from 12 to 1. My day ends at 4:30. You have to balance. You have to set times to work on projects without interruptions. Set time away for emails. I check my email, I check it 30 minutes at a time, 2 times a day. And then if anything is an emergency, then I try to answer that as soon as possible if I have time. If not, it has to wait until my dedicated time to answer those emails. Missed tasks. Maybe you are a healthcare educator that, you're doing a resilience training, an ACEs training, and you have to set time aside to set up your folders for your participants. That all counts as work. So maybe it's setting 2 or 3 hours, aside to do that. When you have to come in late, let's say you have to work until 8 o'clock, making sure that you don't start your day before 11, no matter how many, notifications you get on your phone that you have emails coming through. Be mindful that you're starting work for a reason. You shouldn't have to start it before your scheduled time. Any questions there? And sometimes, maybe you just have to take your phone and throw it across the room and just don't get up if it goes off. Any questions there? Okay. So that concludes the presentation for tonight. I hope you all found at least one thing that was helpful and one thing that you can do today to set you up for success for tomorrow and the years to come. It takes time, it takes patience and practice. I'm nowhere near the healthcare professional that I want to be. I still have a lot of things to learn and a lot of different things to grow from. Maybe it's me communicating better with my boss, figuring out how exactly I can develop a program from scratch. And then, during downtime, checking on your LinkedIn, LinkedIn Learning. I've learned a few cool tips from their learning school that they have online, taking webinars, being mindful and setting time aside to read. Every day from 3 to 4 is my professional reading hour. So I just take that time, whether it's reading a book or maybe I'm researching, statistics or researching, something for a project that I'm working on, but it's an hour dedicated to research and reading. So just be mindful of everything and just making sure that you're taking time for yourself, and then making sure that you have your priorities and you're staying grounded and you're staying true to who you are as a person and what you hope to accomplish with your degree. Any questions? All right before I stop sharing my screen, I'm just going to share a couple quotes with you all. Life is like a camera. Just focus on what is important, capture the good times, develop from the negatives. If things don't work out, take another shot. I really like that one. And then the other one on here is let your smile change the world, but don't let the world change your smile. So just a couple of quotes to end the session. And then if you have any questions at all, feel free to reach out. I'm always a phone call, email, or text away. I want to help you be the best, public health professional you can be. If there's something that, a year from now that you want to know how I did, let me know. I'm always willing to help you out. So I'm gonna go ahead and stop sharing my screen and hopefully answer any questions that you have.